Now we are pleased to be joined by the governor of Tennessee, Bill Lee. Governor, appreciate you starting off the morning early with us. You ready for some football in the state of Tennessee?
Yes, sir. I sure do hope so. We're doing everything we can to make that happen.
I saw yesterday you had Phil Fulmer, the current AD of the University of Tennessee and the national championship winning coach, as well as the chancellor of Tennessee for a press conference about the status of college football, SEC in particular, in the state. What can you tell us? I know that Fulmer said that he hoped there were going to be 25% or was planning on around 25% of fans in attendance for those games. You've already had a big event at Bristol, so I want to start there. A lot of fans showed up at Bristol. I think 20% of the attendance that was allowed for a NASCAR event. And it seemed as if that event came off in a positive way and there was no outbreak. Did that sort of teach you that sports with some crowds present, socially distant, wearing masks are possible?
Yeah, we all know that part of navigating our way through this pandemic is to figure out how it is we can do the things that matter to us and the things that are incredibly important, and yet do it in a way that's safe. So we did a NASCAR race in Bristol, and I went up there. I had the privilege of kind of gentlemen start your engines role, but I wanted to see how we could do it. And there were some 30,000 fans, I think, spread out in that event, and it was a great event. Fans had a great time, televised, of course, so fans across the country could watch it. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, the health departments came out and said, look, there were no connected cases to that particular event. So we saw a great example of how it can be done. I'm really impressed with the way the University of Tennessee has developed a plan. They know exactly what they want to do. They have worked with, in fact, had conversations and looked at the way Bristol did their event. The SEC, of course, has been really thoughtful. Part of what the SEC's done is said, let's go really slowly. Let's take our time. Let's make decisions based on what we know. A real thoughtful approach to this. And that's kind of how you have to do it in an unprecedented situation where you don't know exactly what's going to happen. You got to take it very slowly and thoughtfully, and that's what's happened. So, Coach Fulmer was there yesterday. He talked a little bit about their plan, 25%, or it wasn't clear for certain what those numbers are going to be, but that's the plan they're headed toward, and that's exciting.
Would you go as a governor? You said you went to Bristol to make sure and see how the event went down up there with 30,000 fans present for a NASCAR event. Would you go to Knoxville? Let's say I think the opener would theoretically be October 3rd for Tennessee against Missouri, if I'm not mistaken. Would you feel comfortable going up there? I know you've got 4 kids with your family and watching a game in Neyland based on the protocols that you saw at NASCAR.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't be comfortable. I'd be excited about it. Yes, sir. I think, this whole approach to how we maintain livelihoods of people and lives of people and yet provide for the public safety of people. It's kind of protect your lives of Tennesseans and protect their livelihoods as well. And frankly, college football is in large part a future livelihood for a lot of these kids. It is very impactful to a community. So in the same way that we need to learn how to open businesses safely and open schools safely and allow athletes to play safely, I think we need to move that direction, and I'd be excited to be there. Yes, sir.
I know you went to Auburn. What is it like to be an Auburn Tiger fan but be the governor of Tennessee?
I usually just talk about what I think about the University of Alabama's football team.
That unites everybody. Yes, that's a good line. Yes.
It's in politics, I like to say, let's talk about what we have a lot more that we agree upon than what we disagree upon. Let's talk about those things.
We went out to dinner, you and me and Jason Whitlock and your chief of staff, Blake. I mean, we had a really good conversation about sports and the impact that we could have in terms of getting back to some form of normalcy. And you said something that I thought was really interesting. You, I think, turned to your wife because you were watching an old Auburn football game, and you said, man, we got to have SEC football this fall, or else you're just going to be watching me sit around and watch a lot more old Auburn football games. And so it got me wondering, where were you for the kick six? And is that the greatest moment of your life as a sports fan?
My wife is going to, she's going to single-handedly get football going. It's up to her because anything that will keep me from doing that. So I gave my tickets. I had some really great tickets for that game, and I gave them to my boys. My boys both went to Auburn, and so tickets were hard to come by. And we had a big family gathering. It happens at Thanksgiving. We had 20 people at our house. And so I gave my tickets to my boys. And you know what? I'm kind of glad I have. I don't know if it's you, but when you're a parent, sometimes you get a lot more pleasure out of watching your kids have an experience than you having it. So there's nothing more fun for me than knowing they were there.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. My 9-year-old is my kids are all, I think, going to be pretty good sports fans, but my 9-year-old is a monster sports fan. So we went down to the Alabama LSU game last year, Governor, and we're talking to the governor of Tennessee, Bill Lee. And I've never been more proud of him. So he was rooting for Alabama. He's turned into an Alabama fan, which I think both of us, we need to have an intervention with him and convince him that he's going down the wrong path in life. I'm already a little bit nervous about that, to be honest. But he wanted to go to a game of Bryant-Denny, so we went down to Tuscaloosa. We watched that game, and he handled the loss pretty well. It was obviously a great game between Alabama and LSU. And then we were driving back, and I said, okay, you get to pick anything you want to do for the rest of the day. You know, it's, 7 o'clock, something like that. And he said, Dad, I want to go. I said, we need dinner anywhere you want. You know, we were staying in a hotel right north of Birmingham. And he said, I know where I want to go, Dad. And I said, okay, where do you want to go? He said, I want to go get fried chicken at Bojangles. And then next door there is a Taco Bell, and I want to go get tacos. And then I want to go back to our hotel room and eat Taco Bell and Bojangles and watch college football the rest of the night. And I said, this is a proud moment for a dad because I can't think of any better way to spend an evening than when your 9-year-old says, hey, Dad, let's go get fried chicken and tacos and watch college football for the rest of the night. So he's well on his way to doing well.
When my boys are at the kick six, I think the best fun for me was kind of the same thing. Y'all come back and tell me what that was like.
Yeah.
I want to hear you explain what was the best football game you've been to. So, yeah. You mentioned LSU and Alabama and Auburn, and certainly the University of Tennessee is our flagship institution here, and the fan base is incredible. And, I grew up with that all around me. It's a remarkable thing to see people come together. But it's the SEC, and SEC's an incredible conference, and they got powerful schools. It's a big part of the fall. I mean, you think about how disappointing it would be if we didn't have football, and that's part of the reason that I advocate for this, not just, because I love college football, but because people have to have things in their life. It's healthy, right? Mentally and every other way, to just have things to be hopeful about. We're in the midst of tremendous chaos or at least struggle in this country, some very powerful and positive direction struggle, but we've got economic collapse, we've got a pandemic, we've got social unrest. People need some things to be excited about, hopeful for, to see something in the future that they, believe is going to happen. We're encouraged about the direction that COVID is taking, in fact, in our state right now, and I think states around the country are starting to go, maybe we're making, maybe this thing's going in the right direction. And we certainly know there's going to be an ultimate sort of cure for all of this. But in the meantime, we need Friday night football for high school kids to be excited about and communities to be hopeful for. We need college football. We need NASCAR. We need pro football. We need things that are going to give us hope. But look, we got to do it safely. We're in a pandemic. It's a false choice to say having these things is unsafe and not having them is safe. That's a false choice. We're in the middle of a pandemic that has a lot of medical risk associated to it. So the choice is to move forward, but to do so in a way like they did up at NASCAR. Do so in a way that's safe, that allows for fans to participate, and gives people hope that we got some good days ahead of us.
We're talking to Governor Bill Lee from Tennessee. Appreciate him getting up early to start the day with us. You mentioned a bunch of other different schools. Let's stay in the South in particular. There are 11 states with SEC institutions in them. We've had the governor of Florida on, Ron DeSantis. He said he supports ACC, SEC games in his state. He wants to see it happen. We had the governor of Texas on, and he said he wants the Big 12 and the SEC to be playing. They're ready for college football there. I believe the governor of Georgia has said it as well. You obviously are coming on now with us and saying it also. Have you had any other conversations with other governors in sort of the SEC footprint or maybe beyond about college football and the importance of it being played?
Well, I've actually spoken to a couple of those that you've talked about. I think Tate Reeves, too, has talked about, in Mississippi, has talked about how he thinks we ought to move forward with this. I actually had, every week I have a phone call with a group of governors from around the country. And some of those are in the Big Ten, some of those are in the SEC. They're from all around the country. And we had a interesting conversation. This was probably 2 weeks ago about whether or not we ought to have college football. More, it was just what direction are your individual conferences going. So generally, people want this to move forward, but you got different things going on in different states. So, it's different across the country. We've already seen that. A couple of conferences decide they're not going to do it. But I think across the South, there's a pretty strong belief that this would be good for us and that it would be good for our economies, that it would be good for our citizenry, that it would be that'd be good for the South, but it would also be important for us to do this in a way that doesn't mitigate or doesn't, worsen our efforts, because all of us are working incredibly hard, making really hard choices, doing really, really hard things. All of us, I'm talking about people out there, making decisions to be individually responsible, to do all the things they got to do to navigate through this safely and protect their neighbors and protect the elderly. And we've all been through a lot, and we got to continue to kind of double down on that so we can get this behind us. But I think there's a pretty broad agreement among the governors I've talked to that this would be something that's good for our communities.
We're talking to the governor of Tennessee, Bill Lee. Appreciate him getting up early with us. Governor, one of the things that's interesting is cities, counties can do different things than the overall state can. And so yesterday, on the same day that the University of Tennessee announces that they're hoping to have 25% fans present for their home opener on October 3rd, the Tennessee Titans say they're not going to have fans present for their first home game, their only home game in September. Would you hope to see the Titans eventually be able to have fans as well? And what's the process by which that decision is made for people out there who are curious, maybe the different decisions that can be made for playing the same sport, but different venues, different cities inside the same state?
Yeah, I hope there's one game that the Titans don't allow fans for, and that's the one they've already announced that it's not going to be able to happen. We have, the way it works in our state is that local authorities, local municipalities, local mayors have been given a lot of discretion as to and have authority as to what happens in individual communities. A lot of that has to do with the health departments and who operates the health departments. The state directed in 89 of 95 counties in our state. So there's some nuances to states about how authority around health decisions are made in individual communities. That's why you can see at the University of Tennessee or Bristol or other venues, you might have an in-person event. And then in Nashville, the authority in Nashville that makes decisions around health said that they didn't think it was appropriate to play that game, at least in the month of September. So, but I suspect that'll change. I hope it does. I sure do. Not only do I want to go to Neyland Stadium and watch a game there, but I'd like to go to a Titans game too.
Last question for you. My kids are in school now in person, so thanks for everything you have done to help make that happen. All three of them will be in school in person on Monday. I've got, as I told you at dinner, I've got a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 5-year-old, 7th grader, 4th grader, kindergartner. They matter more to me than anything, like your kids matter more to you than anything. You're talking about your kids being at the Kick 6. How important is it to you that kids be back physically present in school sooner rather than later across the whole state?
I think it's very important. I think the CDC thinks it's important. They've said it. That American Academy of Pediatrics says it's important. But I think it's important. And most importantly, parents think it's important. I'm a strong believer that parents know best what their kids need, and including education. And the vast number of parents in our state want their kids to be in school. They know the facts around COVID. They know what exists out there. We've had this for 6 months, and people know where we are with that. And they know the efforts that are being made. So parents strongly believe kids should be in school. But here's the other thing. Kids statistically, academically perform better. So not only is in-person learning the right thing to do for kids, and every day they're out of the classroom, they're getting further and further behind it. And I don't want the children of our state to get behind. That it impacts a generation of kids. It impacts a state's future, quite frankly. So academically, but then you got a bunch of kids, tens of thousands of kids in our state that have access to services in school that they don't get otherwise. Nutrition, mental health services. Kids with disabilities get services in school that they really need. You know, child abuse reporting, the reports of child abuse in our state have gone down 27% since the schools have closed. I don't think that's because child abuse has gone down. I think it's because teachers who love and teach their kids and look out for them are the greatest reporting mechanism for that. So there's real danger. You know, people talk, again, there's this false choice that staying home for kids is safe and going to school is unsafe. I think that's an incorrect assessment. I think there's a lot of danger and a lot of uncertainty associated with kids staying home, especially a lot of them whose parents need and have to go to work, and the challenges left with that. So I'm a strong believer kids ought to be in school. We're doing everything we can. Let me say one other thing. I want to commend the vast number of teachers. First of all, I commend teachers, every teacher, for the hard work that they got to do. The vast number of them want to get back in the classroom and teach these kids. It's why in our state we have spent tens of millions of dollars in providing for personal protective equipment. We sent out 80,000 packets, one for every classroom in the state, of gowns and masks and gloves and face shields and disinfectant, so teachers would have the equipment that they need to provide for a safe environment in their schools. We're committed to the safety of our teachers and our kids, but we're most committed to making sure that our kids in Tennessee need what their parents believe they need, and that's in-person instruction. So we're headed that direction for most of our districts. And here's the other thing about parental choice. Any child in the state of Tennessee, any parent in the state of Tennessee that doesn't believe it's safe has the option to go to remote learning. We've made that available in every district and every school, so you can choose online if you want to, or you can send your kid to the classrooms.
Great stuff. I know I said last question, but high school football in the state of Tennessee begins on Friday for many schools across the state. How important is that?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about that too. I think it's important for a lot of the same sort of sociological reasons I talked about a while ago, but communities want that to happen. If parents and kids want to be on the football field, then they ought to be. And we can do that safely, too. We worked really strongly and closely with our governing agency here, the Tennessee Secondary School Athletic Association, TSSAA. They're the governing body for high school sports. They put out a very detailed and a very strict guidance on how it is that high school football can move forward with respect to guidance around the athletes themselves, around fans in the stadium, how many people, and distancing and masks and that sort of thing. So again, we can do things if we move thoughtfully and if we're very careful about them and we walk forward in a way that protects the physical lives and the health of our people and at the same time protects our livelihoods and our ways of life.
Governor, look forward to seeing you in a college and NFL and maybe high school football stadium this fall, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Clay.